All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to No Final Bell. As always, this is, we got Jason and Marty here, but, you know, we would like to thank you for us, getting to 50 episodes. Thank you for all the support as always. We definitely appreciate it as we got our mascot here, the Bella the dog. But we thought we'd go on to NWA and Impact talks here.
Yeah, so, um, for the record, over the weekend was NWA 74, but, however, that will be next week, as I will be catching up on it when right before All Out. So I do apologize in advance that I don't have any discussions about what happened at NWA 74. But what we do have is Celebration 74, which was the special, I guess you could say the special episode of NWA Power that they had to commemorate 74 years before the actual pay per view. So, we start off with Chris Adonis beating Caprice Coleman. Then we get to Genocide beating Kayla Cassidy. We go over to the podium. Matt Cardona vows that when he comes back, he will recapture the 10 pounds of gold. Hawks Aerie beat Rhett Titus and Gustavo Aguilar and the Dirty Sexy Boys in an elimination style tag team match. Then we have what was supposed to be an exhibition match between Kenzie Page and Ella Envy turns into a tag team match between Pretty Empowered versus Haley Shadows and Jay Lee, which is won by Pretty Empowered. They jawjack with the Hex before the pay-per-view, which leads to a brawl between the two teams. Um, we have, and then in the main event of Celebration 74, we have an NWA Tag Team title, or I'm sorry, no, it was a non-title match, but if the Spectaculars, which is the new tag team of Brady Pierce and Rush Freeman, if they beat the Commonwealth Connection, they would become essentially the number one contenders to the tag team titles and would get a championship match against the Commonwealth Connection. But unfortunately, the Commonwealth Connection beat the Spectaculars, and after the match, the Ill Begotten beat down the Spectaculars, which prompts the Miserably Faithful to come down to come out and beat down the Ill Begotten, which it sets up the match that they're having at NWA 74, which is, I believe it's called Beelzebub's Bedlam. I believe that's what it's called. So that sets that up. That is NWA, and we got by that rather quickly. Also, for Impact Wrestling, normally I announce the matches that are happening the following week. This week, I will not do that because, like I mentioned before, next week, strictly just NWA 74 for our regular episode. Next week, we're also doing a pay per view special for All Out, but for episode 51, I will be talking about NWA 74, so I'm not announcing any of next week's matches for Impact Wrestling. With that being said, we start off the tapings with the Knockouts Tag Team titles on the line. Vexed going up against the unlikely duo, rather, of Jordan Grace and Mia Yim. As to be expected, Vexed does beat Jordan Grace and Mia Yim to retain. Then we get to Carl Anderson versus Mike Bennett with an added stipulation that if Carl Anderson beats Mike Bennett, that for their championship match, that Maria Kanellis will be banned from ringside, and that is what happens ultimately. So Carl Anderson beats Mike Bennett, which means that the championship match between OGK and the Good Brothers will be fair since Maria is banned from ringside. And by the way, that match is happening next week. But like I said, I am not talking about Impact next week. I'm going to be talking about NWA 74. Um, then we get backstage, and Killer Kelly assaults Tasha Steelz, indicating that Tasha is Killer Kelly's next victim. Then we have Brian Myers on commentary, and for a match between Bhupinder Gujjar and a new Impact Wrestling signing of Jason Hotch. And after the match, Brian Myers beats down Bhupinder, but Bhupinder gets the upper hand and quote unquote pins Brian Myers and takes his title. So, yes, so basically what happened with that is the referee, Scott Armstrong, you may or may not know him by name. Um, if it rings a bell to you, he's the guy that screwed Daniel Bryan out of the WWE Championship that one time. I believe it was at Hell in a Cell in like 2013. So you should know him. But so what happened with that is Brian Myers was getting in like the face of Scott Armstrong. Scott Armstrong is like, "Don't you see this?" Like pointing to his referee shirt and like everything. Like, "I'm the referee. Don't you put your hands on me," kind of thing. And Scott Armstrong backed Brian Myers into the corner, which prompted Bhupinder to hit that corner slingshot spear. I don't know what he calls it. He's got a name for it now, but I don't know what it is. Either way, he hits that, and then basically he goes for the pin, and Scott Armstrong does like a quick count, basically insinuating that, like, oh yeah, hey, this is what would happen if you ever cross me again, son, like kind of thing. So there's that. Then we don't really have to talk much about it, but Josh Alexander beat Vincent, as to be expected. Um, but after the match, Eddie Edwards comes down and tries to persuade Josh Alexander to join the war against Impact Wrestling and essentially join Honor No More. But then Heath hits a wake up call on Eddie Edwards. He's gotten to every single member of Honor No More and hit them with a wake up call. Now he got to the leader, he got to the culprit. He hit that wake up call on Eddie Edwards. Out like a light was Eddie Edwards. Then we have Jessica making her in ring debut against Alicia Edwards. Jessica beats Alicia Edwards. We had a little bit of a backstage scuffle between Steve Macklin, Moose, and Sami Callihan, which ended in Sami Callihan being wrapped in barbed wire, which led to Sami Callihan coming out to the ringside area, still covered in his barbed wire and busted open. He jumps on commentary, gets a microphone to issue Barbed Wire Massacre to Moose and Steve Macklin at Victory Road. Will they accept? As we currently don't know if they are going through with the match. I would assume they are, but it's safe to say that they have yet to accept. And then in the main event, Time Machine, the new trio consisting of Kushida, Alex Shelley, and Chris Sabin, beat Violent by Design. So it's safe to say that Alex Shelley is not phased at all by the World Championship match from Emergence, as I would not have expected him to be. But regardless, Alex Shelley sure had a big task to attempt to accomplish from Emergence, but it just never came to fruition. At least on the bright side, Alex Shelley can say that he finally got to challenge for a world championship.
Yeah, so that's it with NWA and Impact Talk. we get into AEW as we start off kind of hot and interesting. And we start off with Chris Jericho. Starts off the show with Daniel Garcia to discuss the issues between them. Daniel Garcia comes down looking disgruntled. Very interesting. He looked like he was very nervous and didn't want to, really talk about all that was going on between both the men. The fans chant, "You're a wrestler" to him, as they very well should. Jericho wants to be civil, and they don't understand the connection they have, which is probably
He's
true.
talking about the fans don't understand the connection.
Mm-hmm. Jericho wants Garcia to apologize. Why does he have to apologize? I mean, I get it. He pulled him aside, so I can understand the apology there. But Garcia says he knows how special it was to have that moment with Danielson, calling it the greatest match, hung with him for 30 minutes, that match he was dreaming of since a kid, and wants to inspire anyone out there to have that same moment. All he cared about was that moment, and Jericho ruined it for him. I think he probably did because, he was about ready to have that moment with Bryan Danielson, and then Chris Jericho comes down and beats him down after the match. Jericho claims he's the best technical sports entertainer ever, and he wants Garcia to admit it. Which didn't happen, by the way, because Danielson comes out and says that his mentor is trying to pull him into what he doesn't want to be, but he says he can be what he wants to be and agrees that he is a wrestler. Garcia tells him he doesn't want to make a decision in front of people and pushes down Jericho, Chris Jericho. Wow. This is heating up. Then walks out of the ring. Bryan Danielson says he isn't the biggest fan of sports entertainment, but that was sure entertaining. It was.
Yeah, it was.
He got pushed down by Garcia himself. Jericho is pissed that Danielson is being called the best wrestler, but has been around him for 15 years and hasn't seen it once. Chris Jericho probably has a point to it. You faced off against Daniel Bryan.
Yeah,
Daniel Bryan. You never faced off against Bryan Danielson there, Chris Jericho. So how do you know what kind of guy you're going to get in that ring? You're going to get somebody that you've never faced off before in that ring. But Jericho calls himself the greatest professional wrestler ever. That's why he's the GOAT. They will wrestle it all out and says he will choke him out again. And then Jake Hager beats him down. Who do we think can win at the pay-per-view?
I really see it going to Danielson.
Yeah, I feel like you would have to give it to Danielson here. Nothing against Chris Jericho, but Danielson would have the bigger upside of getting the win here.
I mean, granted, like the whole thing with, I'm pretty sure the whole thing with Lionheart, Chris Jericho, is that like, oh, he's undefeated. But like, you mean to tell me that Danielson could benefit more from eating a loss than Chris Jericho? Like, no. I honestly, I feel like Chris Jericho could benefit more from taking the loss to Bryan Danielson than it being the other way around.
I mean, I really do think that Bryan Danielson will eventually get a chance to go after a world title eventually. We'll get to that point very soon, but as far as the pay-per-view, I think it's definitely going to be Danielson that beats Chris Jericho. I think these two men are going to have one hell of a great match. All out, it's very well shaping up to be a really good pay-per-view, so I'm looking forward to it, of course. So we go on to, Jay Lethal and Dax Harwood face off against each other. Jay Lethal, who is number 3 ranked. Of course, number 2 is Powerhouse Hobbs. And as far as number 1 goes, I would think CM Punk, but I have no idea. I would think it goes CM Punk, Powerhouse Hobbs, Jay Lethal, who is number 3 ranked. I have no idea who is 4 or 5, but Jay Lethal keeps on getting the victories and moving up the
rankings.
The rankings. And then Sanjay says the match is going to be a trios match all out with two guys that are close friends with them, who ends up being none other than Impact Wrestling's Motor City.
Yeah.
The Motor City Machine Guns are going to be teaming up with Jay Lethal to take on Wardlow and FTR.
That's a
Holy shit, what
crazy.
a great
Yeah.
trios match that's going to be.
That.
That,
That's a
no
crazy.
offense, should have been, like, I'm sorry, nothing against most of the trios that are facing off right
Yeah,
here,
I
but
agree.
you
That
left
should
out
have been.
so many great trios.
I agree.
You could have had Jay Lethal and Motor City Machine Guns in that trios tag team tournament. Same thing with um, possibly FTR and um, um, God, FTR and Warlow.
The Pinnacle.
Yeah, same thing with same thing with the House of Black. It's kind of sad that actually, Sting, Darby, and Miro you could have had in that trios tag team division, but you know what? They're making up for it here. Here's more trios matches that are going to be happening. If you think about it, about a quarter of the pay-per-view is going to be trios tag team matches, which is not a bad thing.
I mean, hey, they got to promote those
You got to
trios
promote
tag team titles somehow.
exactly.
Build to an entire
So
trios like division,
if you see
basically.
this match heading to All Out, who do you give the win to? Do you give it to Morrison Machine Guns and Jay Lethal, or do you give it to Dax Harwood and Wardlow? I feel like either way, it's still gonna build towards Jay Lethal and Wardlow facing off for the TNT Championship very
Well,
soon.
I was gonna say I look at it this way because it's since it's a trios match, it really wouldn't hurt Jay Lethal's standings in the singles
Yeah,
one.
exactly. If you have
So,
Jay Lethal and Motor City Machine Guns lose to FTR and Wardlow, it doesn't hurt him at all because he will still be ranked in the singles division.
mhm.
Just very bad in the trios division, but I don't think that's gonna matter too much, honestly. Um, so I would have to give it to probably FTR and Wardlow, but I would not be shocked if it's Jay Lethal and MCMG.
I would not be surprised. So
We have some sad news, unfortunately. This is not the kind of news I really wanted to say
yeah,
on here. Unfortunately, Thunder Rosa is hurt
yeah.
and has to relinquish her title for now because
You
of
could
being injured.
tell how sad she truly was during that backstage segment.
As everybody knows, the um, match that was supposed to happen at All Out was Tony Storm versus Thunder Rosa
Well,
for
once
the
Tony
AEW Women's
once
World
it was
Championship.
announced also that Chris Statlander would not be um, the number one contender because she is injured as well. So
Mm-hmm.
they had to kind of call an audible initially
And
with,
unfortunately, they had to throw out another audible.
yeah,
But
hey, this is going to be a good match though.
if
Yeah.
you see it, do you think that this is actually a better match for the interim Women's World Championship than initially having it Thunder Rosa and Tony Storm? I think
I
so.
happen to agree. Yeah.
I think so. Because if you look at it, why didn't they have a fatal four-way match for the Women's World Championship to begin with? Why does it have to be as a interim World Championship match?
Yeah, like that
Because
one's kind of
now you look at these four women deserve a shot after the Women's World Championship.
I agree.
You look at it, you got Tony Storm, Britt Baker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Britt Baker's been there, done that.
I
Been
really
in
hope they
it.
don't give it to her
Um,
again.
but you got Jamie Hayter and Hikaru Shida. Hikaru Shida is a former Women's World
Yes.
Champion. Britt Baker, former Women's World Champion. Jamie Hayter and Tony Storm has never gotten it here. This is their first opportunity. Actually, Tony Storm, this is not her first opportunity
No,
after the title. This is actually her second.
yeah.
But signs,
We would essentially like if not for Thunder Rosa being injured, we would have gotten a rematch essentially between Tony Storm and Thunder Rosa.
Exactly. So
So
if you look at this and you see
this is
this fatal four-way match,
this is like the best possible scenario.
yeah, this is probably going to be one of the top matches heading on the card. I think these 4 women are going to bring it. But you see this match, who's your favorite to win it? Because this
You
was a
know,
tough one to call.
something tells me that like they would throw a curveball and have Jamie Hayter win it. Because like
I
think
feel
about
like
it.
I would like that. I think
Yeah.
I would like that
Think about
because
it, though,
then you can
because-
have a rivalry between her and Britt Baker. Britt
Yes,
Baker ends up getting
that's what
jealous.
I was thinking. That's what I was thinking with
But
that.
I
and
feel like that's
why-
not where the direction's gonna go.
I don't think so either. I
because
think
you
it's
still have
obviously going to
Tony
be.
Storm,
Yeah.
Thunderstorm, and you still have Britt Baker and their whole rivalry. So no matter what, I think you got some
Baker's gonna
storyline.
Yes.
Britt Baker, even though she's not going to be getting the win here, I think we'll still end up getting an opportunity at the Women's World Championship, the interim one.
Come on.
Because, first off, I don't know how long of an injury or how bad the injury is for Thunder Rosa. I don't know how long she's going to be out for. But if you see it, I think Tony Storm is destined to win the interim Women's World Championship here.
Agree.
I think she was going to win it regardless of it being interim world championship or the main championship.
As we have the return of our mascot.
So I really do think that she's going to win it here. And is, her, Britt Baker, and Jamie Hayter and Rebel done? Absolutely not.
No.
Because Britt Baker is still going to get a shot even if she wins it or not. So it's very interesting to see what's going to actually happen. So, an interesting turn of events. We got father versus son here. The outcome is not exactly the way that I thought it would go. Colton Gunn faces off against Billy Gunn. Actually beats his father, Billy Gunn. But unfortunately, he was using some dirty tactics, and with the help of Stokely Hathaway, who ends up giving his cards to the Gun Club, and they seem to accept it. And beat down on the Acclaim as well as Billy, and a Swerve in Our Glory come down to save them. What does this mean? Doesn't mean anything.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, I think that Gun Club will eventually get a shot at the World Tag Team titles. But for right now, that's exactly not what's going to happen. Because heading to the pay-per-view, we'll talk about that. But I thought we'd talk about this first. Britt Baker beats Kylan King.
Yeah.
Are we shocked? Not really. Britt Baker, they're going to build her up heading into that interim Women's World Championship Fatal 4-Way match. So, of course, you're going to give her, the powerful win here.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, Jamie Hayter beats down on Tony Storm, and then Hikaru Shida helps out Storm for now.
Yeah.
So, you're going to be building it up more heading into that match with all 4 of those women. Then Swerve and Our Glory look to want to put their titles on the line against the Acclaimed. Thoughts is going to be happening all out. The Acclaimed versus Swerve and Our Glory for the AEW World Tag Team titles.
Yeah.
Thoughts? Is it about time? The Acclaimed.
I was gonna say,
get some tag team
I would
gold.
like to see them actually pull the trigger on making.
I feel like Tony Khan has something going with the Acclaimed or homegrown talent,
right?
and I really do think that it's the time. Nothing against Swerve and Their Glory. I think that they definitely
they've had their time.
They had their time and they've done well as a tag team.
Yes.
But I think it's time for the Acclaimed to rise to fame with tag team titles.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
and even then, it's like you can easily build Swerve and Our Glory as like singles guys. If they don't last much longer as a tag team.
Yeah, exactly. But who knows? Maybe Swerve and Glory will keep the tag team titles, and then Gun Club is next for the tag team titles. who knows? We'll happen to see. Definitely have to watch out with All Out this coming Sunday. So, John Moxley. Wow, this was a crazy thing that happened. They actually
Yeah,
moved up the title match. No, it's not because CM Punk is leaving or anything like that. Well, it's because he's still hurt.
yeah,
So John Moxley beat CM Punk in a couple of minutes. I mean, a couple minutes
yeah.
with two paradigm shifts to become the undisputed AEW World Champion. Um, Real question is, was this the best way to protect Punk?
Yeah.
I think
I
so.
mean, granted, yeah, it probably wasn't the best way to protect Punk in the sense of him
I hate
losing
to
the
say it,
title, but you know,
Tony Khan, I get it. You want to like create ratings, but don't bring back your talent too soon.
I
If
agree.
they're not 100%, don't bring them back. Kenny Omega, yeah, he's not exactly 100%, but he's the best bout machine, and he's just gonna end up doing what he wants to anyway.
Yeah,
CM Punk, clearly he was still staggering, and even though when there was still reports even before he came back that he was still struggling and stuff like that. It
yeah.
wasn't completely healed, but yet, oh, let's have him come back and then use a super kick. Well, I will say the funny thing about that,
Yeah,
I
he
hate to
sold the wrong
I hate
foot.
to expose the business, but he sold the wrong foot.
It's a work, brother.
But I still think it's still bothering him, even though he was holding the
Yeah,
wrong foot. Um, but come on now, Punk. I get it, it's kayfabe and all the other stuff. You know that kick, but at least hold the right foot.
yeah, exactly.
Like, come
Like,
on
don't
now.
make it obvious that you're
Yeah,
holding.
exactly. Like, don't make it obvious that like this is just like a worked injury and that you know somehow he's gonna come back next week. Oh, I just needed some time to adjust. I want a rematch, all out. I could see something like that happening. Of course, watch out for all out. The match that's going to be the one to talk about, of course, you know, is Aussie Open and
Oh yes.
the Elite. That's going to be one hell of a banger match. I hope they give that match like some great time. Um, I hope it goes like 15 or so minutes because I think it's going to be a
I
great
don't know
match.
if you should really relegate it to just like 15 minutes. I
Well,
think you should really
it's going to be a
like make
20.
it go like
It's going to be
20.
20-minute time limit. So,
Well, okay, if
or it
that's
could be
the
going
case,
30. Who the hell knows? But
I was gonna say give that match as much time as possible. So that's the way I look at it.
right. So going forward, Christian Cage, which the Jungle Boy who did actually challenge Christian Cage at first for All Out, but now
Yeah,
Christian Cage will now face Jungle Boy at All Out. Thoughts? That match
it was
definitely
bound to happen
I knew it was going
anyways.
to be happening. I hope they literally beat the living crap out of each other, even
Oh,
if
I'm
it's like
sure they
literally the
will.
first match on the card. I think these two men are gonna bring it all out
Yeah,
and just be ready for an all out brawl.
ha, no pun intended.
So yeah, um, if you see this match, who is your like favorite to like? Who you think that is going to be winning between Christian Cage and Jungle Boy?
I think you would have to give it to Jungle Boy. I think
Jungle Boy.
he's mainly the. I think he's the big, the heavy
I
favorite.
think I hope that giving him a win here propels him into a singles competitor going forward.
Yeah,
I'm really hoping so because I think you have something with Jungle Boy if you do that. So I'm hoping Christian Cage does win. Um, so Ricky Starks comes out afterwards, says he hasn't been in the best of moods because he has to deal with a lot of things going at him at once, and he thought he had someone to help him out. And Ricky Starks helped out Hobbs to have the spotlight together and calls Hobbs a low ball and cuts the heads off of snakes and wants to fight him in All Out. Thoughts? Well, it is going to be happening at All Out. Ricky Starks and Powerhouse Hobbs will compete against each other at All Out. Is it time for Ricky Starks to get the win over Powerhouse Hobbs and solidify himself as as a singles
Yeah.
competitor. Yes, I will agree.
But at the same time, I do see them going the route of like a time limit draw, so that it protects both men.
Hmm.
Because you really like
I know.
you can't like, especially if you're just building them up as singles guys.
I get it. Powerhouse is House Hobbs is number 2 ranked, which I don't know if I like that because he's been beating jobbers and getting wins on Black and dark elevation. So I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I just don't think that having both of these men lose. Like, I like the idea of a time limit draw, but the thing is, I had a pay-per-view. I just don't know. I really don't know. I feel like you would have to give it to Powerhouse Hobbs here because he's number 2 ranked, and then you can head him into competing for the World Heavyweight Championship. But then again, Ricky Starks has a lot more upside than Powerhouse Hobbs does right now. So I have no idea what direction they're going to go. Although it will definitely be interesting to see who's going to win or not. So, yes. Speaking of a hell of a match, let's talk about this 5-star match that got, between United Empire and Death Triangle.
Yeah.
Wow. I think wow is an understatement. This was one hell of an amazing
The
fight.
match absolutely deserved its rating.
Oh yeah, it definitely did. These two trios went at each other for as long as they could on regular television. This definitely had a pay-per-view type feel to it. These two trios, there's just something about Will Ospreay and Aussie Open that just it's amazing.
Yeah.
Will Ospreay is still young too, and the thing that he can do at such a young age with not a whole lot of experience in a wrestling ring, or with a lot.
Well, okay, he has a lot of experience. He just isn't as like well known to a lot of people,
Right.
As, say, like some other AEW guys or even like WWE guys.
I know exactly. So I'm very.
It's safe to say, not to cut you off, but it's safe to say that Will Ospreay is a very underrated performer.
Oh yeah, he is.
Because the matches that he puts on, and like hardly anybody even really knows who the hell he is. That's just a criminal sin.
Yes, it would have been nice to have seen Death Triangle win because they're actually the AEW talent. And United Empire is not, but United Empire do get the win here.
But look at it this way: at least we're getting a dream match.
Oh yeah.
Between, granted, it's still like it's in a trio and not a proper one-on-one.
Mm-hmm.
But at least we get to see Kenny Omega versus Will Ospreay.
Oh yeah, this match better be the main event. It will lead
probably to a one-on-one encounter between the two men.
Right.
I would at least hope so.
I do think that this match is going to be the main event of Dynamite, later tonight. So I'm ready to see it for sure. But yeah. So Kip Sabian beats down Pac afterwards. I really do think that this match will be on the buy-in for All Out itself. Kip Sabian and Pac for the All Atlantic Championship. It's about time that title actually gets defended on the main show. So, do you see it being defended at All Out?
I do see it being defended at All Out, and honestly, I would be okay with the match being put on the buy-in. So, and even then, it was nice to see
Kip Sabian without the box on his head too.
Well, especially just the way that Kip Sabian was even brought back, because everybody knew that Kip Sabian was the guy that had the box on his head in the crowd in front row,
Mm-hmm.
but then Pac like finds him, or like quote unquote him, takes the box off of his head, and it's like, wait, it's not Kip Sabian. But then next thing you know, Kip Sabian rushes
Yep.
Pac and attacks him from behind.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you could not have, excuse me, a better return for Kip Sabian than that.
Oh, I
And
know.
even then, they like
That's why I.
the one Rev Pro All Atlantic Championship defense saw Kip Sabian in the crowd,
Mm-hmm.
essentially like teasing this match.
Oh, I know.
So it makes perfect sense for the story.
Yeah, so I really do think that Kip Sabian will face off against Pac for the All Atlantic Championship.
Well,
So it makes a little bit of
even just
sense.
in general, like have Kip come, have Kip be featured on TV more after this moment,
Yeah, I
because
know.
like it makes it would make no sense to just have Kip Sabian beat down Pac and then you don't follow up with that. It's like have him come out tonight on Dynamite and be like, "Here's the reason I attacked you, Pac. I want that All Atlantic champion," or something like that.
Right? I could see that. I could see that being a thing. So done with that conversation. Then
That is
Kenny Omega
Dynamite.
comes out and looks like they want a piece of each other. Will
Oh
this be
yes,
a dream match later
the
tonight? Yes.
post-show promo essentially with Omega and Osprey. Omega was dishing out some harsh words at Osprey certainly did not appreciate, but Kenny Omega was seemingly like, yeah, because there was one point in that like after show thing where Osprey went to like charge at Omega, and Aussie Open had to hold him back, and even then Omega's just laughing about it. He's like, ah. So
I know.
you know,
These two men definitely want war against each other. United Empire and the Elite are going to go to war. It's tough to tell who's going to actually win, but I really do think it's going to be Elite and Best Friends at All Out for the Trios Tag Team titles. But then again, who knows? I mean, I really do think that United Empire should have been on the other side. United Empire and the Elite would have been one hell of a banger match.
yeah,
That should have been like 40, 45 minutes
I agree,
at the pay per
but
view. I think you really, really messed that one up.
I
There,
mean, it is what it is, though.
but at least we're gonna get it on live television,
Yes,
which already beats out anything that WWE can put together right now on the
exactly.
main
Yes,
shows, which is sad. But
yeah,
they used to, at
and
least back in the day, maybe they used to have pay per view type of matches on Raw or SmackDown.
I mean, they still
Nowadays,
kind of
no.
do. Yeah,
But yeah, I think this is going to be a dream match later tonight, and I think that both trios are going to literally bring the house down.
yeah,
As far as that, we go on to the Rampage side of things.
and we get the
A little bit
Rampage
of a turn,
semifinals.
turn of offense. I mean, shocking,
Events. Yes,
but it makes sense for storyline. Dark Order
yes,
face off against House of Black and actually beat the House. Well, we thought that the House never loses. Well, they actually certainly lost this time.
yeah,
But from the
but
distraction
yeah,
of Miro, and will face Orange Cassidy and the Best Friends in the finals. And then the House beats down Miro, and then Darby and Sting come down in the House retreat where they all face off at All Out. Yes, I think they will, and it will be announced on Dynamite later tonight. Because I think that's going to be a great match. That's going to be happening. Another one I could see it All Out maybe on the pre-show is something like this. Hook apparently doesn't care about Matt Menard and Angelo Parker, but could that match happen next? It's kind of interesting if he's going to face off against both of them, not like for the FTW Championship, but like on the 2-on-1
just in like
handicap match or something
handicap.
like that. I could see something like that.
But then it makes you wonder who would Hook's next challenger be for the FTW title, because and it's kind of
I
sad
think
how
more Matt Menard to Angelo Parker, but I could be wrong.
I mean, either way, how sad is it that they're treating the FTW championship better than the TNT
I
championship? I
know
believe I have already mentioned this, but
it.
even just in
It does
general,
seem like that. I don't know why.
well, better yet, why are you making open challenges seem cooler and more fresh for a championship that's not even sanctioned, as opposed to an open challenge or open challenges for a championship in AEW that is sanctioned? Because there was an open challenge on Rampage for the TNT Championship that we will get into. That a lot
Hmm.
of people would look at it and be like, "This is an open challenge," and
Yeah,
this
I
is
know.
supposed to be what?
Actually, speaking of that, it's next. I'm not gonna really go too far into this, but Wardlow beats the Hollywood Hunk Ryan Nemeth to
Yeah. So
retain the TNT Championship.
a lot of people look at that open challenge and it's like, huh?
And yes,
What?
Jay Lethal and everybody come down and look at, Wardlow dominating.
Yeah. Even
But
Chris
has
Sabin showed
has
up.
Chris Sabin looked at Wardlow like, oh crap, maybe I've got my hands full of a guy that is just probably going to demolish me
All out.
at all out.
Yeah. I mean,
I think so. I really do still think that's going to be a great match. Nothing against Wardlow and Jay Lethal, but you still could have had FTR and Machine Guns face off against each other in a dream match. You know, at all out for the one of those tag team titles. But you still could have had Wardlow against Jay Lethal because technically, if I remember correctly, didn't Jay Lethal ask for a rematch for the TNT
yes, he
title and
did.
still didn't get it yet?
Yeah.
So
So
you could have had it as a pay per view. Then
sounds
you
to
could
me
have
like
had.
Wardlow is ducking Jay Lethal,
That's why I say I do think that
even though Wardlow is supposed to be the face.
I don't know. It does seem like that.
He's doing he's showing a heel trait in ducking Jay Lethal and defending the TNT title.
So going forward, Powerhouse Hobbs beats Ashton Day, but as he sent a message to Ricky Starks and a factory is choking him out and then QT punches him down. What does this mean?
Talking about Ricky Starks,
Yes,
not
Ricky
Hobbs.
Starks. Um,
Should have probably mentioned that in my
yeah.
notes.
The factory is choking Ricky Starks out and he's bleeding from the mouth. And then QT punches Ricky Starks down. What does this mean? It could mean that somehow Hobbs and the factory are having some kind of working relationship and they have one goal in mind to beat
Take
down,
out.
take out Ricky Starks. That I could see. That would be very interesting. But this really brings like a whole new direction with Powerhouse Hobbs and Ricky Starks with a victory involved. I don't know why, but hey, it's something that you can do. So going forward, Jade Cargill will face Athena All Out for the TBS Championship. Finally,
Yeah.
finally, a true competitor for Jade Cargill. I think it's about time for Athena to dethrone Jade Cargill. She's been the champion. She's been undefeated for a long time.
Yeah.
It's time for Athena. It's time for a new face to be the TBS champion.
Yeah, because Jade has pretty much been the TBS champion since what Revolution is I
Yeah.
believe when they had the finals. So yeah, I think it's safe to say that Athena will be your new TBS champion, and even then,
Mm-hmm.
you need to just build that women's division a lot better than
Oh,
what
I
you're
know.
currently and it's sad too because you have all these stars in the women's division that you just don't push. And it's like, or well, you give them the light of day, but other than that, you just don't give them a push for the
Oh,
world
I know.
title, and
That's
it's like,
true.
what the fuck are you doing, Tony Khan? Especially Ruby Soho. She's had two championship challenges. She's had two opportunities to become a champion when she first challenged Britt Baker after winning the Casino Battle Royale, the Women's Casino Battle Royale, and then she was in the finals of the TBS Championship Tournament against Jade Cargill. Now, I can understand if you, like, you know, if the initial plan was to have Jade Cargill, but,
Hmm.
like, man, it was a sin to not have Ruby Soho win
Oh,
the
I know.
title defense, win that title match against Britt Baker and
I
be
know.
the world
It makes
champion.
you wonder like what they're truly doing with Ruby Soho because I mean we'll get to that match next, but it just I don't know. It's really tough because you had so many title opportunities for Ruby Soho, TBS Championship, AEW Women's World Championship match, and you're just squandering her because she's been losing. She's been doing nothing in AEW. She wasn't really doing a whole lot in WWE either, other than maybe being in the Riot Squad and all that other stuff. And then you look at what she's doing in AEW, it's like she had opportunities. She could have been the champion. She
Well,
has
see,
the look of being a champion.
that's another
Why don't
thing
you give
too.
it to her?
That's another thing too. That's what WWE did as well. They failed to give her even like the women's tag team titles in WWE.
Mm-hmm.
Like especially before she got released, when she teamed back up with Liv in the Riot Squad. You could have had them be the women's tag team champions, but you didn't do it. Why?
I have no idea.
Like, what is it about Ruby Soho or Ruby Riot or Heidi Lovelace, whatever you want to call her, that you don't want to give her a championship in a major promotion?
And
Like,
look at what Liv Morgan is doing right now.
exactly. She's the SmackDown Women's Champion.
Yeah, exactly. She's a SmackDown Women's World Champion. Now let me tell you something here. Let me ask this question. If Ruby Soho was still in WWE under Triple H regimen, would she actually be the Women's World Champion right now? It's tough to tell,
It's tough to
maybe.
say because even in NXT, they never gave
Now,
her the strap.
I just want to know, what does she have that people look and say she's not championship caliber? I just want
Maybe
to.
just her look, but like, but the same people,
Okay, and
the same people said the same.
and Jeff
People said the same
Hardy
thing about Paige, and yet Paige became a
on the
Divas champion.
first night that she was a pro.
Exactly.
She was the NXT Women's World
She
Champion and won
simultaneously
the
held.
Divas. Yes, I
Yeah.
get it. It was a Divas Championship, but she
It's
still
still a
won
damn
a
championship.
championship on the first night she was there.
It was basically the predecessor to the women's title.
I get it.
So,
I get it that Ruby Soho has that very goth-like look to her. But
okay,
let me
but
tell
so
you
does
something.
Paige.
Yeah,
And Paige
Paige
won
does.
a championship.
Look at fucking Jeff Hardy has the gauges and still went out and won world championships. Yeah, I get it.
Well,
With coming back to WWE, maybe he didn't win the WWE championship
well,
when he
even
was
then,
so promised to be.
it was before he had the gauges that he even won a world
But
championship.
he still has
But,
that look. He's he painted
yeah.
his face and
Well, not to
had
mention,
that
when
look.
he had the gauges, he won a tag team title. Like it's still a championship.
Right.
And well, that and the United States Championship. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, it's a mid card belt, but at least he won a championship. You know, like it's something.
I
It may
know.
not be a world title or whatever, but even
You
if you
know,
gave Ruby Soho the TBS Championship like
it's
down the line,
sad
it would
what
be
even has happened. Speaking of Jeff Hardy, it's sad of what like even what really happened with Jeff Hardy because the Hardys might even have been the World Tag Team Champions right now if Jeff Hardy didn't get into any legal trouble, which
yeah,
sucks, but it
yeah.
is what it is. Um, Speaking of Ruby Soho, Ty Mello and Sammy Guevara face off against Ruby Soho and Ortiz, but just, I don't know what it is about Ruby Soho and Ortiz. They lost to Ty Mello and Sammy Guevara with the help of Anna JAS and Angelo Parker. I just,
Cool hand Ange.
I don't know. Tony must love Sammy Guevara and Ty Mello. You know what?
I don't understand
Let me
why.
tell you something. If there's any kind of match I would like to see, have Ty Mello and Sammy Guevara face off against Penelope Ford and Kip
Kip.
Sabian for those mixed tag team titles, to be honest with you.
Okay, you know what? Now that you mention that, I actually wouldn't mind. Like that would actually be an
That I could
acceptable
see. That
match
I
that
could
I could.
see
Yeah,
on Rampage, to be honest with you, and it would be okay to see. Rampage seems to be the kind of show like with like talent that like they really truly don't want to have on Dynamite, that but they don't want to have on Dark and Dark Elevation all the time either.
yeah,
Rampage is kind of like that show that like elevates if you do well on it, that you can get to Dynamite, but
yeah.
it definitely has that different show type feel to it, even though it's literally taped right after Dynamite.
Well, not to mention, I just wish that the show would get like the light of day more.
I know. It would
You know,
be
I wish
nice.
people gave it a chance
It
more.
would be nice if it was.
I could see why a lot of people hate the show though, because it's not really built that well, and like
Hmm.
you know, matches are just kind of like rushed, and like you
Yeah.
just kind of put matches together just for the hell of it on Rampage. But at the same time, it's like you got to understand where Tony Khan is coming from too. He literally taped the show right after Dynamite, so it's like whatever he has planned for Dynamite is whatever he has planned for Dynamite. But
Right.
then whatever he has planned for Rampage, it's just like kind of may seem like last minute when Dynamite actually like gets there.
Hmm.
So
Right.
I mean, it is what it is.
So CM Punk was in the trainer's room. What does this mean? It just means
It just
that
means that he's injured.
he's injured and he needs some more time to recover from his injury. I don't know the timetable of it, of a return.
I
I would
have no
think maybe
idea
a couple
because
more months or a couple more weeks. I have no idea. I would think just probably a couple more months to try to heal and
probably, yeah. I
get
mean, it
that
is a broken foot after all,
and
so
get that foot,
a
100%
broken
healed.
foot doesn't heal that fast. I mean, yeah,
So,
he's like getting around better, but at the
right,
same time, like, well, not only that, he had surgery on it, so surgery does take a while to recover from,
hmm,
especially, you got to put in all the time for rehabilitation and physical therapy.
right.
So, which is not easy. It's like, I seen my mom have to do it from a knee replacement. It is not an easy thing to have to recover from.
No, no, it's not. So, we got into the main event of Rampage, where Claudio Castagnoli puts his ROH World Heavyweight Championship on the line against Dustin Rhodes in the Open Challenge. It's sad because I think Dustin Rhodes, with being in wrestling for 5 different decades,
Yeah,
should have very well have been a world champion maybe a couple different times in all the promotions he's wrestled for. But unfortunately, he falls short. I don't know if it's safe to say it's probably just time for him to lace up the boots and just you know be done with that. Like,
I don't know, man, because like, it's not. He's making it seem like it's a bad thing that like, oh, he'll go down as somebody that never won a world championship. I mean, look at Roddy Piper. He's an all-time great that never won a world championship.
hmm,
Mr. Perfect, another example, all-time great that never won a world title. So, you know,
I don't
it's
think
not entirely a
Razor
bad.
Ramon will never win a world title either. I think,
Um,
and he's
I believe he was the AWA, like, but actually, I think you're right. But like, you get my point. There have been
there have been
wrestlers
some
in the
great
past. There have
Hall of
been
Fame
some, yes,
wrestlers that have never won a
never won a
championship.
world championship, but went on to have Hall of Fame worthy careers. And I think Dustin Rhodes would definitely fit that mold. But at the same time,
I
it,
get where he's coming from. It would
yeah,
be at least nice to win it. I mean, Claudio,
if anything, we've discussed this outside of the podcast before as well. Dustin, like, should at least have a run in the NWA
hmm,
and win
the 10
the 10
pounds of
pounds of
gold.
gold.
I think
Because,
so.
like, well, think about it too. It's
His
like if
brother won it.
I was gonna say, yeah,
Why
if
not
Cody
have
could do
Dustin
it, why
run?
couldn't Dustin? You
Exactly.
know, and I'm sure that Billy Corgan would give Dustin that luxury of like, honoring essentially his father's legacy. But at the same time, I could see why Dustin maybe wouldn't want to do that because, like, pretty much he's always like been in the shadows of his own father, so he's probably trying to get out of like being in his father's
Mhm.
shadow. But at the same time, I look at it as like, why wouldn't you do what Cody did and honor your father's legacy and then go after the NWA
Right.
World Title, because
Yeah,
that's what
exactly.
Cody did. That's the whole reason that that's the whole story that they built up for All In, was that Cody was vying to win the NWA World Title to basically honor his father's legacy. So,
Oh, I know.
you know,
Exactly. So that's going to conclude this episode of No Final Bell. Please make sure to follow us on social media and Tinkle Sports. Of course, our channel is Tinkle Sports and Entertainment in the bottom left. And this show is so of course every Wednesday at 5, which is bottom right here on this screen. And as always, Sunday Morning Tinkle is back. We will be talking about all of the preseason cuts heading into, you know, the start of the season, who was our predictions, who could win the MVP, and all the other stuff. So that will be happening next show. Um, and a very interesting move, RJ Barrett is now, signed a 4-year, $120 rookie extension, as well as Jimmy Garoppolo finalizing a restructured 1-year deal to stay with the San Francisco 49ers as being the highest paid backup quarterback, which I think is insane. So definitely look out for Sunday Morning Tinkle every Sunday at 9 a.m. Of course, watch out for Out Turn 4 every Tuesday at 5 and the show every Wednesday at 5. Thank you for watching and have a good rest of your day, everyone. See you in the next video.